Yo, what's going on, everybody? So today I want to have a conversation I know is going to be controversial just based off of the title. I know I'm going to get some dislikes off of this. So essentially I want to talk to you guys about why Hinata Hyuga was the best option to replace Sasuke on Team 7 during the events of Naruto Shippuden. That's going to be key during the events of Naruto Shippuden. So those of you who have followed me since my original channel know that I'm not a big fan of Sai. Like, I literally sigh when I think of Sai. I don't like the character. I think that he's not one of the worst characters in the series. I don't think that at all. But he's a character that I feel leaves quite a bit to be developed, if I'm just being honest with you, okay? Like, I feel like Sai could have been a lot better than how he was handled, though I will acknowledge that the anime did a better job fleshing him out than the actual manga did. Jumping right into it, the reason why I think that Hinata would have been a better option for Team 7 is, let's look at it from a balanced perspective, okay? So when Team 7 was formed, you had a dojutsu user, you had a chakra powerhouse, and you had the person who was intelligent but didn't have the street smarts to quite back it up, but she also was able to balance all that out with having the best chakra control on the team. And so when you get to the Shippuden era, essentially you've seen it where Sakura is now the medic. She's a support ninja, but at the same time she has this extreme chakra control that allows her to deal out some monster power. And then you have Naruto, who is a walking chakra tank, and yet at the same time he needs somebody who can reel him in. And I think that Hinata would have been the perfect person to slide in, taking the place of Sasuke. From a symbolism standpoint, you lose one dojutsu user and you replace them with someone who is essentially coming from a clan. Early on in the series, we were led to believe that the Hyuga clan was superior to the Uchiha clan and that the Byakugan was superior. So essentially, Naruto, when you think about it, would have gotten an upgrade. Now let's look at it from another perspective though. Let's look at it from this right here. Given the fact that Hinata is a bit more shy and reserved, you could have seen more of what you actually got in this recent episode in the time travel arc, where Hinata was able to step up and kind of reel things in with Naruto and Sakura before they escalated too far, and you had one of those moments where you saw the two characters interacting. And I think that that is something, if Masashi Kishimoto would have went this route, I definitely think that if you would have got to Naruto and Hinata being a pairing, it's one of those things where it could have been done to the point where now you have the opportunity to play with yet another triangle, which is what Kishimoto was going for. He essentially wanted to have the first love triangle be Naruto and Sasuke and Sakura, and then the other one, once we got to the halfway part, Kishimoto said, oh, I'm gonna do the love triangle between Naruto, Sakura, and Hinata. Now, I know Kishimoto said in 2017, I planned this from the beginning. Like I've talked about in a few other videos, you can pull up the statements that he's made before that. He didn't come up with that idea until the midway part of the series, after Hinata's confession, when Hinata ended up spiking in popularity and was crashing into the top 10. So I'll say that for another video if you guys want something more in depth on that. But the reason why I think that this could have done something very great is essentially we could have negated everything that happened in Naruto the Last. Let's be real for a second. Naruto the Last is essentially the story that's supposed to tell us how Naruto and Hinata got together. It's supposed to essentially cement and justify the pairing. If you would have had Naruto and Hinata on the exact same team, you could have seen character interactions with them, because in the manga, Naruto and Hinata might have said 3 whole paragraphs to each other in the entirety of the series. And I'm talking 3 paragraphs from Naruto, 3 paragraphs from Hinata. They didn't have much development. And if you would have had them on the same team, this would have made Hinata's confession to pain feel so much earned, okay? Because Hinata knows that the Akatsuki are hunting Naruto, but she doesn't know the full fear, the full terror that comes from the Akatsuki hunting down a Biju. Okay, so essentially, go back to the Kazekage arc, okay? If you go back to that arc, if Hinata would have been inserted on Team 7 right from the beginning, if you go back to there, you have the opportunity for Hinata to hear from Chiyo about the curse of the Jinchuriki, and to see how Naruto is shedding tears there, how essentially she stumbles across Gaara's dead body, just like how Naruto and the rest of Team 7 did. And out of her fear for Naruto, you get that moment where Hinata can envision Naruto potentially suffering the same fate, which would have been great foreshadowing given the fact that Hinata would have seen Naruto's body as because it was dying after Madara extracted the QB. And so it would have made that moment when she's racing after Naruto, hoping to help Sakura keep Naruto alive, and she comes up short. It would have made that feel better earned. Imagine having Hinata there when Sakura is running towards Naruto and Naruto's in that four-tail state. It would have given us the opportunity for Hinata to see just how much Naruto's burdened with his promise to bring Sasuke back to the village, and also to see the literal beast that Naruto was struggling with. We would have had so many moments like that where we could have gotten some real big payoffs, as well as the opportunity to build up. Because I personally think, and again, this is me, I personally think that when you read the manga, that the few moments that Naruto and Hinata had sprinkled in wasn't enough to even make people say, oh, this is such a great idea for a pairing. I know the anime did a bunch of stuff building up towards that, but we ain't talking about the anime. We're just talking about the manga. Now, don't get me wrong. Like my man Joe the animator said, the Naruto story at the end of the day is not about who's flirting with who has a crush on who. It's about ninja doing ninja things. And yet at the same time, you would be ignorantly naive to the fact that Kishimoto didn't play with the whole idea of romance, but like he stated himself, that's not something he's very good at building up towards. And I think the best way you could have handled this is if you would have borrowed some of the elements that you had from Inuyasha, where you had the love triangle with Inuyasha and Kagome and Kikyo, and you slowly write out the previous love interest. So in this case, you could slowly write out Sakura being a love interest for Naruto, and you bring Naruto and Hinata close together. I'm not saying you overdo it on the melodrama between the two, but having Naruto and Hinata interact in that way, it could have been one of those moments where when Naruto grows to realize that he actually loves Hinata, it could have changed the whole dynamic. Because let's look at it from this perspective, okay? When Hinata confesses to Naruto in the pain arc, that makes that moment when Naruto flips out just immediately pay off all the more, because you see the buildup. You see Hinata get more comfortable with Naruto. You see Naruto acknowledging and speaking with Hinata on a more regular basis. Everything feels more earned, because let's be real, okay? Naruto at that point in the story didn't know that he had feelings for Hinata. He didn't know it. If you had anybody who he grew up with at the academy get killed or seemingly killed right in front of him, Naruto would have had that exact same reaction at that point, because pain had psychologically broken him. I like to say that pain basically talk no jutsu Naruto. He gave Naruto a dosage of talk no jutsu that Naruto can handle. Like if pain would have killed Sakura in that moment, Naruto would have flipped out. If he would have killed Shikamaru, Naruto would have flipped out. Anyone who Naruto had any semblance of respect for, that he interacted with, like anyone except for Kiba. If it would have been Kiba, Naruto's eyes might have changed the color. But I mean, Kiba's father. Nobody cares about Kiba's. But like, if it had been anybody else, Naruto would have had that reaction. But if you would have had it where all of a sudden you have that, and then in the same arc, Naruto meets his father, now you're setting up that moment where, okay, maybe there's something more to Hinata. Now having those two interact, now you get the moment where when Kushina says, find someone like your mother, now all of a sudden people don't immediately think about Sakura, because Sakura and Kushina share a lot of the same characteristics when you go by the manga. I'm not talking the anime where they make her more docile and turn her more into Hinata light with a little bit of spice to her. I'm not talking anything like that. But it gives you that moment where all of a sudden when Naruto tells Minato at the end of the series, where Minato, I think in volume 70, is telling Naruto like, hey, I'll tell your mother everything. Now it makes that moment when he says everything's not going the way mom wanted it to go. It makes it feel earned, because now we know, okay, they've been building up towards Naruto and Hinata getting together. When the war arc takes place, when Hinata smacks some sense into Naruto, it's going to feel earned. Neji would not have needed to die. That's the important thing. Kishimoto admitted that because of what he wanted to do with that pairing, Neji needed to die in order to cement Naruto and Hinata getting together. That's not my words, that's his words. Neji's death could have been prevented, because he wouldn't have needed Neji to die to tell Naruto, hey, Lady Hinata really cares about you. Your life is more than just your life. You wouldn't have needed anything like that. You wouldn't have needed Naruto with those sad puppy dog eyes when all of a sudden you have that moment when he realizes that Hinata is caught in the infinite Tsukuyomi. You wouldn't have needed needed anything like that. You wouldn't have needed it because everything would have been built up. Like, I feel like this would have given the Naruto pairing more of a payoff. And most importantly, I feel like having Naruto interact with Hinata could have done so much more for Naruto's character development, because Hinata could have been there when they learn about Jiraiya passing away. Naruto could have had that moment where instead of it being Iruka, Hinata could have been one who talks to him and consoles him and says that Jiraiya and you have a bond. You could have had something like that similar where it doesn't have the same impact, but it does more towards building up towards the pairing. And most importantly, guess what? Hinata's character actually goes through a full character arc. I feel like a lot of her development was crammed at the end of the series. Once you have the character being stated by the author as stepping into a main heroine role, we have to judge her as more than just a stock character. We have to hold her to the same standards as being a main character, a main heroine. And so I feel like this would have given the opportunity to start exploring some stuff. I think if you would have gone this route, you wouldn't have had the issue with the pairing wars where people are like, oh, it's Naruto Saku, oh, it's Naruto Hina. By gradually writing out Naruto's focus on Sakura and focusing it on Hinata, you can still focus on the ninja elements, but in the back of the reader's mind, they know that it's building towards this conclusion. And I want to close out with this bit right here, because I know somebody's going to bring it up. I know somebody's going to say, oh, well, they needed Sai because they couldn't break up the teams. I'm going to disagree with you there, because Tsunade tells Naruto, hey, okay, we need to find a replacement. And she doesn't stop Naruto when Naruto is going out looking for replacements. Everyone in Naruto's generation is a Chunin at that point, with the exception, obviously, with the back end generation like Konohamaru and them, because they're a few years younger than Naruto, so they haven't gone through the Chunin exams yet. But when it comes to everyone in the Konoha 11, Naruto and Sasuke are the only ones who aren't Chunin. Everyone else is a Chunin, and in the case of Neji, they're Jonin. So once you reach that rank of Chunin, you're considered equal with your Jonin leader in the sense that they're no longer your leader unless they're appointed as your squad leader. That's part of that thing when you get that flashback with Asuma and he explains everything to the members of Team 10. So essentially, in this moment in the timeline, Team Kurenai is already going through those moments where they're taking individual missions, they're leading teams of their own because they're Chunin. Kurenai is pregnant. The team at that point, it's not disbanded, but essentially Kurenai, because she's pregnant, they're not going out on all these different missions. That gives you the opportunity to say, okay, because Kurenai is pregnant, it looks like Hinata's not going on missions with Kiba and Shino anymore, and it gives you that moment where now it's completely justified that she's been on the team with Naruto and Sakura and Kakashi. But I want to know from you guys, what do you guys think about that? Do you think that that's a reasonable way to handle it? But so always, guys, if you like anything I had to say, don't forget to comment, rate, subscribe, and share. Thank you so much for watching all the way to the end. Have an awesome day, guys.